No one tool can solve every problem, but enterprise security vendors have a terrible habit of promising otherwise. Security teams don't need hype, you need answers and analytics you can act on quickly. ExtraHop uses network traffic analysis to complement your SOC stack with complete east-west visibility, real-time detection, and guided investigation so you can speed up threat detection and response by over 50%. Learn more at extrahop.com/securityweekly. By the end of 2020, 99% of exploited vulnerabilities will be publicly disclosed and known to IT system admins. The consequences of that fact means the burglar will already be in your house because you left the front door wide open by failing to patch known vulnerabilities. How can you keep the threat actors out? Through cloud-based automation, Automox enables you to slam the door on unpatched OS and third-party vulnerabilities across your entire Windows, Mac, and Linux infrastructure. Take advantage of a free trial with Automox to not only see the vulnerability status of your infrastructure, but do something about it within minutes. Start automating the fundamentals of cyber hygiene at securityweekly.com/Automox. That's securityweekly.com/Automox. Networks are becoming increasingly complex and fragmented, and digital transformation and DevOps are driving an explosion in network connectivity changes. With each new network connection, cyber attackers may gain another opening to breach or traverse the network. At Tufin, they've pioneered a policy-based approach to network security management using automation and analytics. As a result, you can make network changes in minutes instead of days, reliably and securely. To learn more about Tufin, the security policy company, go to securityweekly.com/Tufin and sign up for a free evaluation.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by John Strand. We've heard from our listeners that they love our content, but the amount of content we distribute can sometimes be a little overwhelming. We've recently released our customizable listener interest list. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe and click the button to join the listener list and let us know your interests. Also, John Strand will be teaching active defense and cyber deception at Black Hat 2019. Please register at blackhat.com/US-19/training/schedule and search for a guide to active defense, cyber deception, and hacking back because the URL is way too long to read on the air. All right, John, let's get into the news for the week.
Absolutely.
There's a number of announcements. We don't have to spend a lot of time on some of these because, Google Next was last week. So you saw some interesting, Google Cloud announcements, info blocks, for example, supporting Google Cloud and single sign-on obviously made some sense.
So the one, I have a couple that I'd like to get your opinion on, if that's cool.
Sure.
The Solarwinds acquiring Symantec. I think for a lot of our listeners, that's a company they haven't heard of, and $329 million is a lot of money to throw around. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that acquisition.
Yeah, well, SolarWinds is an IT kind of management company.
Mm-hmm.
Symantec is a IT service management company. So it kind of makes sense, right? If you think about what SolarWinds is trying to do around network and security and endpoint management, they need some ability to do IT service management work. I just assume SolarWinds had some of this capability, but maybe not.
Too, actually, maybe they did, but it wasn't up to the quality. And that's one of those where you can build it or you can buy it, and maybe they just decided that buying it was the way to go.
Yeah. Now remember, SolarWinds went public late last year. Not something that I track because I don't see them as a pure play security vendor, even though they have security capabilities. Yep. Maybe this is one of the strategic acquisitions to enhance their portfolio.
And they are one of those vendors that we see. Yeah, they're one of those vendors that we see everywhere too. I've mentioned it a lot on the show. There's a bunch of vendors that we hear about, and I just don't see them in our assessments. We just don't see them at all. SolarWinds is not one of those vendors.
You see a lot of SolarWinds. Interesting.
Yeah, we do. Especially like you said on the network management side. Maybe not the full security stack, but on the network management side for sure. Now, another, I got to talk about the PC Mag article about Symantec Norton Security Deluxe. I really, really wish this goes into anytime anyone's doing a review of a product, they should they should kind of go through exactly how they went through and tested that endpoint security product that was out there. The one thing that is really nice about Symantec, in my opinion, and I wanted to get your opinion on this too, Matt. So lately, I've been breaking away from the idea of best in breed security. And I've been telling a lot of people, if you're buying a product, you should be looking at that product as far as what are all the solutions that it can bring to bear. And one of the cool things about Symantec and Mcafee, I can't believe I just said that out loud, is you can integrate DLP, you can integrate your firewall, you can integrate the VPN, you can integrate all of these different things in the product offering itself. And even if that's not as good in any one of those categories, or even all those categories, to have it unified underneath one platform and developing cross-training across systems administration, help desk, security teams, network support, I think in the long run that's a better play for organizations than trying to hodgepodge, quote unquote, best of breed technologies altogether. And while I may disagree with Symantec getting 4 out of 5 or 4.5 stars, I would agree if organizations are looking at products like this, that it's probably better just to turn on all the features that you have in one security product than it is to have 400 security products. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
All right, so I'm going to give you two thoughts. First one is, the thing I struggle with this announcement is, I'm not sure if this is a consumer play or an enterprise play.
Yeah,
this is my general problem with Symantec is, what do they want to be when they grow up? Do they want to be a consumer security product, Norton, or do they want to be an enterprise security product, SEP, Symantec Endpoint Protection?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my first, just kind of, I'm not sure. I think this is really more for the consumer because it talks about parental control and dark web monitoring. Not that you don't need some of those at the enterprise, but parental controls, not really, right? And so that's my first challenge with this announcement is I think it's really meant for the consumer market. And in the consumer market, I agree with you 1,000%. Look, as a home user, you don't have time to integrate a bunch of different solutions. So packaging them all together, putting them into one solution makes, I think, a ton of sense. I do agree with you in some respects that on the enterprise side, that applies as well. Because why go out and integrate 5 different endpoint solutions with 5 different agents that you all have to manage in separate management interfaces, and then try to take, to our last segment, take the output of those 5 endpoint solutions and integrate them with your SIM and your network data and all this other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
The promise of these new endpoint protections is, can they do it better and ultimately replace what Symantec and Mcafee has as kind of their core foundational antivirus, anti-malware position?
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting to see how that continues to play out, because
and as machine learning and all, and as machine learning, I think you said once, when you're looking at machine learning and artificial intelligence, in the endpoint, that is no longer a differentiator. It's basically a feature that all of these vendors should have. And your artificial intelligence algorithms are only as good as the data that's fed into it to train those algorithms. And how do some of these quote unquote smaller companies, how in the hell do they keep up with Windows, Mcafee, and Symantec as these large companies start gearing up their capabilities in that same space? And that remains to be seen.
Yeah. So I think this one's a little difficult. Are you really getting the best out of your Symantec and Mcafee environments? Maybe you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, look, simplify.
Don't change.
But if you're not, then who are the guys that are going to replace what Symantec and Mcafee, from an antivirus, anti-malware perspective, have been just the leaders in? Can these new solutions, and I think that's where we've seen the endpoint solution struggle a little bit, is being that full replacement for the old stuff.
Yeah. So continuing on the endpoint, Minerva is in the news again. And it looks like Minerva is starting to get into AV orchestration. And I think that's interesting. They specifically mentioned Windows Defender and the ability to actually manage that. Minerva has the ability to actually augment and hook into that as well. This is interesting because I just talked with Lenny Zolster last week in Orlando, or 2 weeks ago, maybe it was last week. And it's interesting to me. Minerva is so cool and so different. Whenever you're basically going into anti-evasion capabilities of a lot of really advanced malware and kind of creating that cyber deception within the system itself, now they're starting to orchestrate antivirus as well. I wonder what this means. Is it just a natural progression of their platform to try to be that one management platform? Or is it a play to start moving into the rest of the endpoint AV product space as well?
Yeah, back to the same conversation we just had,
Yeah.
right? That's the potential move of the EDR folks, right? Is that the endpoint detection response market needs to move into some of what was traditionally in the endpoint protection platform market if they want to be that single agent doing the whole thing on the box, right? Is this that start of that move, to your point? And it could be, or it's just, look, we're trying to orchestrate across all these different endpoint solutions because we won't get to the promise of one, maybe. I don't know. But it is an interesting announcement here.
Yeah, very interesting. And then did you get a chance to read the HelpNet security article about security hygiene?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I mean, look, what's in here is what I think we've known for a while, that one, the first item on the list is humans are the weakest link. Yeah, because we click on the link, right? I mean, so, we've talked about remote exploits and vulnerabilities and all this stuff for years. Who cares? The human still is going to click on the link, go to the page, exploit a client-side vulnerability or a misconfiguration on the box. And as you scroll down through this, you start to realize that, client-side vulnerabilities are still there. Misconfigurations on the endpoint are still there. And that's why these attacks work.
Well, and that's huge. I think we've been saying this for a long time. Like you said, we've been beating this drum, but it's starting to haunt me more and more. I go through the reports at BHIS, and I just went through one today. I've got a debrief a little bit later. And it's the same crap. It's a lot of the stuff that they have listed out here, the exact same vulnerabilities. And these are organizations that have that next generation endpoint. They have that SOAR platform. They have all of these technologies. And I still come back to, it's not that these products aren't alerting or they're not working. It's just the staff is so inundated with all of the alerts and the white noise that it's easy to fly underneath the radar. And I think that there's a lot of hygiene and cleaning up that signal to noise ratio that needs to be done. And I don't think enough vendors are talking about it. How do you remove third-party software on the endpoints that's not required? How do you clean up the network by blocking advertisements coming in to reduce the number of attacks coming in and the amount of white noise that's on the wire? We aren't having those conversations. Instead, we're just dropping more vendors onto the space, and it's not getting better. And that's a concern to me.
Or how do I effectively patch my endpoints when I know that the software, the third-party software I'm running on them, is out of date, right? I mean, this is where we saw.
You can't patch it, right?
Yeah, that's why we see Automox is very interesting, who's a sponsor, right? The ability to centralize patching across Windows, Mac, and Linux. Because look, it's still a hard problem. No one has really addressed the patching problem really well. But at the end of the day, cyber hygiene boils down to basic patching of not only the operating system, but the third-party software on your box. This is one of the things I pushed Tenable on when I was there for years, going, guys, all customers want is a closed loop patching process. You scan the box, you see the vulnerability, you know the patch that needs to be applied. All they want you to do is apply the patch, rescan and validate it's correct. Good. I mean, it's such a simple use case, but nobody does it.
But you talk about that use case, and I use an example, right? One of those people I eat too much, right? And I'm constantly fighting weight. And that gets worse as you get older. And I think everybody knows what it takes for the vast majority of people. There are people with legitimate conditions to lose weight. Exercise, eat less. Do those two things. And in security, we're like, hey, patch your crap, set up good, strong passwords, lock down your perimeter. Like we've been saying these same things. This is what you need to do. And then organizations are like, oh, wait. There's artificial intelligence or single pane of glass. I'm going to go for that. And it's like, no, you need to patch your third-party applications. You need to train your users to stop clicking links. You need to do these things. Here we've got a new product that I can purchase for data loss prevention that'll be able to detect it. And it's just like I said, in the weight thing, it's like we know what we have to do, but all of a sudden there's a new diet where you drink motor oil and you're going to lose a lot of weight. Well, let's try that diet. That sounds like a good idea. And we're constantly sidetracked by the quote unquote easy solutions and the easy implementations and the silver bullet whenever we know goddamn good and well what we have to do. And sometimes I think a lot of the advanced technologies that are out there, they're merely distractions from us doing what we should be doing, the actual work.
Yeah, we're chasing the shiny object. is part of the problem, right? We've known for years these are the basic things that we should be doing, and it's basic prevention on one side, but everybody's been going after the response side and all the shiny objects of building out the advanced security operations center and implementing SOAR and doing all these other things, and we're forgetting about just the basic stuff that would prevent a huge number of these attacks if we just did the basics of patch and make sure that the boxes are configured correctly. We just forgot some of those basics. And this article, all it's doing is reiterating what we've known for years.
Yep. And my computer is dying and I've got to get going. So I will talk to you all later. Thanks, Matt, and rest of crew. I will see you soon.
Thanks, John. All right. There's a couple more stories I want to cover quickly. Tufin went public last week. We talked about this a little bit on Business Security Weekly on Monday. A successful IPO. They priced the IPO at $14 a share. They're sitting somewhere north of $20 a share today. I do track them. They're not big enough to put into the Security Weekly 25 index because their market cap's only sitting about 650 to 675 million. But a very successful IPO for another security company. I'm hoping we see a couple more of these over the next couple quarters. And the last item I did want to cover today is Tenable. Let's see. Well, let me find that article real fast. Tenable did introduce their predictive prioritization in Tenable.io. We did cover the story a few weeks back where they put the predictive prioritization in Security Center, which is the more legacy on-premise solution. This week, yesterday, they announced the predictive prioritization in Tenable.io. I dug into it a little bit because I wanted to understand where's the secret sauce here a little bit. It was an interesting read, and there's some videos out on the Tenable website. The first step they do is they say, okay, go to Nessus Professional and export a scan result, and then import it into Tenable.io. If you're using IO, obviously the data is already there. But what they're doing now is allowing you to sort the data based on their vulnerability prioritization rating. And there's a couple additional components outside of the base CVSS 3.0 score that is integrated into that VPR, that vulnerability prioritization rating. A couple of them, I have my notes here. One is threat intensity, okay? Threat recency, how often, what have they seen recently for the threat? So a traditional threat vulnerability correlation, what it doesn't include is any criticality of the asset. I do not see in the capabilities any way to rate the potential impact based on the criticality of the asset itself. And that's where I think the threat vulnerability management vendors still have a leg up over this capability, is because of some of the business criticality components that they can add into their solution. Also, we saw a demo of this on our webcast with Recorded Future a few weeks back, where their browser plugin could also do a basic prioritization based on a Nessus scan report in the browser. With their plugin, they would also do a threat correlation and do some risk ratings as well. So there's a couple different ways to get to this capability. So I just kind of wanted to educate all the viewers on what did Tenable do, but what are some of the other people doing, and where are some of the gaps in that. All right, with that, I think we'll call it a day. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please stay tuned as we air our pre-recorded InfoSec World 2019 interview with Patrick Tierney from Endgame. We'll see you next week on Enterprise Security Weekly.